Hello, my name is Konika Sarkar, and today I will be presenting a video discussing the domestic abuse suffered by men. This research based project will briefly look on the history of female domestic abuse before shining a light on what is becoming a growing and prevalent issue. For the purpose of this video, domestic abuse includes but is not limited to psychological, physical, sexual, financial, and emotional abuse. Before the first wave of feminism, women had no right in the society. Living in a patriarchal society, women were considered inferior to men and were abused by their partners. The first wave of feminism started from 1830s to early 1990s and speaks about the political equality of women. They wanted the right to vote as only men and people who own property were allowed to vote. Women protested for their rights, which was later known as the women's suffrage movement. From 1960s to 1980s, the second wave of feminism gained more attention and speaks more about the social equality of women. Women wanted equal rights as men, such as equal pay, applying for mortgages, etc. They wanted their own identities and not just be known by their partner's name. The third wave of feminism began in the 1990s to the early 2000s. To overcome the flaws of the second wave of feminism, the third wave examined the issues relating to women on a global basis. The fourth wave of feminism began from 2012 and it focuses on how women can be empowered using internet or digital media as a tool. Prior to feminism, wife beating was a valid exercise of a husband's authority over his wife. Most of the legal systems around the world speak about domestic abuse from 1990s onwards, and there are still cases of women getting abused at present. Historically, there has been little evidence of men facing domestic abuse, but more commonly in the modern world, these instances are becoming more and more frequent. According to Office for National Statistics, 4.2% of men in England and Wales have suffered domestic abuse in year ending March 2018, equating approximately 695,000 people. Perhaps most alarmingly, 94.7% of men said that they had not contacted the police regarding their current partner's domestic abuse. This strongly implies that men do not have the confidence in themselves or in their justice system to seek legal support on the issues of domestic violence. This is then reinforced with the fact that 54.1% of men state that they have never told anyone about their abuse they suffer at the hands of their current partner. This figure is over twice the response given by women for the same question. Given these two statistics, it appears that the majority of men who are confident to talk to someone about their troubles are not as confident in disclosing their story to the police. This could be for a number of reasons, such as fear of being vilified by their community or feeling emasculated. Media perception is quite an interesting perspective to look at this issue. Having done some research myself, it was interesting to see that most of the results on a popular search engine's image page for the search term domestic abuse newspaper returned a vast majority of images being related to abuse suffered by women, as you can see in this slide. It was only at the third page when a story exclusively linked to male abuse was displayed. This very strongly suggests not only that high-profile males do not feel confident enough to discuss the issues on mainstream media, but that media itself does not cover different angles on the topic of abuse as regularly as it ought to. Both of these suggestions could lead to males suffering from abuse to actually becoming less likely to open up and seek help. Men may feel like they lack the role models in popular culture to inspire them to share their experience. On the 5th of November 2019, Mona Altawahi uploaded a video of a live broadcast from ABC Australia, a publicly funded broadcaster which was roundly criticized by Sky News Australia on the 7th of November 2019. A panel of extreme feminists was slammed for inciting hatred and abuse on men and for unanimously saying that there was no such thing as a positive masculinity. In the following example, the panel is clearly trying to devalue the strengths of men as a whole, and this will further discourage men from having the confidence to speak out against abusive partners, particularly if that partner is a female.
People have resorted to violence as a way to finally break through and get heard and achieve what we need. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
How many rapists must we kill? Not the state, because I disagree with the death penalty, and I want to get rid of incarceration, and I'm with you on the police. So I want women themselves.
I think if anyone's shocked by what Mona's suggesting, you just have to look back to history and a certain faction of the suffragettes in the early 20th century. They used violence.
I think violence is okay.
From what we have seen so far, it is apparent that there are so many key players who are influential to and influenced by the discussion surrounding male domestic abuse. I have highlighted 6 key stakeholders and will discuss the roles that they play. The first and most important stakeholder is the victim themselves. Crucially, it is the lack of communication between the victims and the other stakeholders that has created the negative stigma surrounding not only male domestic abuse but more broadly male mental health conditions. Most closely linked to the victims are their families, friends, colleagues, and other loved ones. These are the people who the victim is most likely to open up to and therefore is responsible for the emotional support they give to the victim. The police and justice system are under growing pressure to treat causes of domestic abuse perpetrated by the woman equally to the way they are treated in cases where the abuse was triggered by a male. Statistics have shown that less instances of male domestic abuse are reported as seen earlier. However, in instances where males were victims, a conviction was minimal. The media has great responsibility to represent domestic abuse equally for male and female victims. The work of journalists is a great influence on society and how society shapes its views on social issues. Health and protection services are developing their practice to accommodate the rising numbers of male abuse victims. Psychologists and support centers are better equipped to handle cases of male domestic abuse with sympathy and respect. Finally, as a result of the development of this issue, charities are beginning to emerge to treat victims. However, it is the lack of options available to these men that allow victims of male domestic abuse to sink further into depression and trauma. A lot of challenges exist for men who suffer domestic abuse. For a male in a relationship, distinction between abuse and not abuse is difficult to understand, as men tend to downplay it. The one who realizes they are in an abusive relationship and want to leave do not always get proper support to escape the abuse. Men should be educated about the signs of being in an abusive relationship as well as how to escape an abusive relationship, as this is one of the most important steps for a victim. Men who report domestic abuse are less likely to get a conviction, as in an article written in 2014 by the Art Psychology Research says how men were most likely to be charged than women. The following video will show how during a social experiment by BBC Three, a woman abuses a man in public place and shows how people react to them.
Do it, come on. Stop it. Just come on, just get in there and get it.
Sorry, but don't put your hands
We're just
on the wall like
having an argument, that's all.
Look at me! Stop!
Okay, alright. Don't
Look
hit,
at me.
alright?
What are you doing?
Okay.
As we can see from the video that when a woman was getting abused by a man, people interfered and asked if the woman was okay. But in the case of the man, only one person stopped to ask if the man was okay. This shows how different people treat a man who is being abused. Men can also get a lot of different opinion or backlash if he decides to stand up for himself. People believe that men are stronger than women, physically and emotionally, so they cannot be abused by women. People forget that abuse can be of different types and does not just have to be physical. Men are told to man up, as a woman cannot abuse man. There is a lack of support options for men, and most of the support groups are for women. Men have very little options to choose from, which makes it difficult for them. They do not always get the proper help from them, which makes the victim's life much more challenging. In the present era, men can tackle domestic abuse in many different ways. Campaigns such as 1 in 3 campaign have been providing awareness as well as support to men. There are different support lines such as Men's Advice Line, which can help male victims of abuse to leave an abusive relationship as well as to get adequate support to move on with their lives, which can make a difference. Speaking with a loved one who the victim trusts or a trained professional can help the victim in taking actionable steps necessary for the victim. It also sometimes helps the victim to have a clear mind and also to know that they have a support who will help them get through the abuse as well as the mental trauma. Many people have been using social media such as YouTube to tell their stories and to spread awareness about the abuse that men face, which help the people in an abusive relation to understand their situation and also help them get over it. People have built and developed communities in social media platforms such as Reddit to tell their stories as well as help other people in need, and people have been sharing their stories in these communities as shown in the picture. We need to realize how men are also victims of domestic abuse and need help. Equal support for male domestic abuse victims should be available, and also centers such as SARC, which is for female victims, should also have a center for male victims, which will help male abuse survivors, as men need the same support as women do. We should also provide the information and support to the families of the victim to assist their loved ones to seek help that they require as well as deserve, not only to leave the abusive relationship but also to progress with their lives after ending the abusive relationship. Everybody should be informed about the steps that can be taken to help a victim of domestic abuse. We can also encourage, through use of multimedia, providing a new idea of what a man shall be and eliminating the macho stereotypes given to men. This can be a part of education commemorated annually, like the World Mental Health Day, and marketing materials can be promoted to change the perspective of a stereotypical man. We have always been taught that men are stronger than women, but men go through the same things as women do, as they should be given the help that they deserve instead of stereotyping them. Thank you very much for enjoying the video. To close this discussion, I would like you to take 30 seconds of your time to watch this short video involving young males around the world.
Can be abused too.
Men can be abused too.
The men can be abused too.
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 Man can be abused too.
Men can be abused too.
Men can be abused too.